Poem Worker Reads History by Bertolt Brecht. Bertolt Brecht was a German theatre practitioner, playwright, and poet. There was an impact of Marxism on Brecht. He did a new experiment on theatre called epic theatre. During the Nazi period, Bertolt Brecht lived in exile, first in Scandinavia and during World War II in the United States. Poem A Worker Reads History. We will have to study this poem from the Marxist approach. Only that time we can understand this poem. Marxist approach means the Karl Marx says that in the history that workers are neglected. They have given less importance by capitalist. They are exploited by the capitalist. In the same way, in this poem, that poet Bertolt Brecht speaks about the workers and soldiers. He says that in the history, workers and soldiers they are neglected. Their deed that is suppressed and the credit is given to the king or the noble person means knight. Poem Who built Thebes of the seven gates? In the books you will read the names of kings. Did the king haul off the lump of rock and Babylon name Babylon many times demolished? Who raised it up so many times? Now see, in the first stanza of the poem or at the beginning of the poem, poet asks so many questions. He says that who built the seven gates of the Thebes? Thebes that is the ancient city in the Egypt, and there were seven gates. And poet says that who built those gates? Generally, history will say the names of the different kings. That different kings has contributed to build those seven gates. But history would not name a single worker who had actually worked to build those seven gates. He says that was there the king means actually was there king to bring rough stones to build that gates? Did the king brought a stone to build that gate? The answer of that question will be no, because king just ordered his workers to build gate there, and workers did everything for the king, and history mentioned the name of that king, but history does not give a name of a single worker he had worked there. Many workers might have lost their life to build those gates. Another thing is that and Babylon many times demolished, who raised it up so many times. This Babylon that is the capital of ancient Babylonia means there was an ancient empire named Babylonia, and this Babylon that was the capital of that empire, and many time Babylon was attacked by the enemies. Many time that capital was destroyed, and each time the capital was rebuilt. But who rebuilt that capital? Who were those person to rebuild that capital? Generally, history will mention or history will give the names of kings who had ordered to rebuild it, but history does not give the name of a single worker who had actually rebuilt it. Is here that Bertolt Brecht want to say that the workers are neglected. Means in modern days the all credit goes to the industrialist. Workers work, but its profit and credit goes to industrialist. In the same way, in past time, soldiers and workers they were working, but the credit used to go to the king or the emperor. Means this is a Marxist approach towards the poem. In what houses of gold glittering Lima did its builders live? Where the evening that the Great Wall of China was finished, did the mansions go? Now see, in this stanza, that poet speaks about the Lima. Lima, that is the capital of the Peru. Peru, that is the name of the country. He says that in which of Lima's houses the city glittering with gold lived those who built it. It means that the people or the mansion who built the houses from that Lima, those mansions, those workers, they are not living in that houses, but those glittering houses were built for the emperor. They were built for the noble people, but the workers, they had to live in a hut. Means all glittering houses from the Limas were built for the noble person. Another thing is that he speaks about the China Wall. He says that when China Wall was completed, that time where did all mansions go? Where did all workers go? What happened with their life? That is not mentioned. History gives us names of different emperors who had contributed or who had ordered to build the China Wall, who had ordered to continue the building of the China Wall. History gives the name of those emperors, but history does not give the name of the worker who had worked actually to build that China Wall. Great Rome is full of triumphal arcs. Who erected them, or whom did the Caesar triumph? Had Byzantium much praised in song, only palaces for its inhabitants? Now see, in this line that poet speaks about the Rome. Means in Rome there are many arcs. There are many arcs, and who built those arcs? But we know the names of kings, that this king had built this ark, but actually it is not real. The arcs were built by different workers, but history neglected it. Now see, the title says that worker reads history. Here what poet want to suggest that here poet want to suggest that now the workers are alert. They know about their rights. They know that they are being exploited they are being exploited by the industrialist, and now they are alert on their injustice. Now they would not allow industrialists to exploit them. Means here the poet want to say that the the workers now, they know about their rights. They would not they would not tolerate injustice on them. This want to express in this poem. In this poem, worker reads history. Now poem continue. The great room is full of triumphs, arcs. Who created them, or whom did the Caesar triumph? Had Byzantium much praised in song, only places for its inhabitants? Now see, means Caesar owned the battle, but was the Caesar alone there to fight against the enemy? No, there were many peoples. Many soldiers might have lost their life in the battle, but history says that Caesar won that battle. History does not give the name of a single soldier that this soldier had contributed in this battle. Another thing is that the Byzantium, that was the part of ancient Roman Empire. That was the Byzantium, that was a part of the ancient Roman Empire, and in many songs or in many poems, the Byzantium is mentioned. There were places, but who were living in those places? The noble people, they were living in those places. Poor workers or farmers or soldiers, they were not allowed to live in pal- those palaces. Means all noble people, they were living in the palaces of the Byzantium. Even in fabled Atlantis, the night that the ocean engulfed it, the drowning still cried out for those slaves. The young Alexander conquered India. Was he alone? Now, see, in this poem, that poet speaks about the Atlantis. Atlantis, that is a fictional island. Atlantis, that does not exist in reality, but that is the fictional island. And he says that even in fabled Atlantis, the night that the ocean engulfed it, the drowning still cried out for their slaves. Means in that Atlantis or in that fictional Atlantis, many slaves might have died, and still today the cries out for their slaves, or the drowning still cried out for their slaves. Means many slaves have lost their life in that fictional Atlantis island. Young Alexander conquered India. Was he alone? Now see that Alexander the Great, he had came to India. Means one by one he was winning the empires. He had own different empires, and he had to win the entire world. Means that was his dream. And he had come from Greece towards the India. Means some he had not owned entire India, but some of the parts he had owned. But was there only Alexander the Great in that battle? Its answer is no. Means there were many soldiers who had accompanied Alexander to fight against the enemies. But history says that Alexander had owned the half of the world. It means that there was only Alexander who was fighting against the enemy, and one by one he was conquering the empires. One by one he was winning the kingdoms. The drowning still cry. Sorry. Caesar defeated the Gauls. Did he not even have a cook with him? Now see, in this line that poet speaks about the Caesar, Julius Caesar. He speaks about the Julius Caesar, and his era was first century. That Caesar defeated the Gauls. That Gauls, that is the part of the Western Europe, and was not there a single person in the army of the Julius Caesar. Means was not there even a cook with him. Was Julius Caesar alone to fight against the Gauls? It is not like that. Means with Julius Caesar there was enormous army, and all people contributed to fight. All people had made their best to fight in that battle, and with the army that Julius Caesar had owned with the Gaul. But history does not speak about the soldiers or other people who had contributed to Julius Caesar to fight that war. Philip of Spain wept when his armada went down. Was he the only one to weep? Frederick II on the 7 Years' War, who else on it? Now, see, In this line, that poet speaks about the Philip of Spain, means that Philip of Spain had fought against the England, means there was the war between the Spanish Armada and England, and that war took place in 1588. 1588 means Spanish Armada versus England. In this war, that Philip of Spain won that battle. Sorry, Philip of Spain lost this battle, and when he lost this battle, that time he wept, means was he only person to express his sorrow. There may be many other soldiers he might have wept because of their defeat, means there was not only Philip of Spain who wept when his armada went down, means there were many soldiers, and when those soldiers have seen their fleet, their warship has been destroyed by the England, that time those soldiers also might have wept. They must have feel sorrow to see their warships are being destroyed, their warships are sinking in the ocean. Another example is Frederick II on the Seven-Year War. Who else on it? This Frederick II, he was, or his age or his era was 1756. Means this 7-year war was between 1756 to 1763, means 1756 to 1763. In those 7 years there was war, and in that war, that Frederick the Great won, means who else on it, means there were soldiers, and those soldiers won that battle. Frederick the Great, he was the emperor, he was the king, he had just ordered, and on his order the soldiers had fought for the Frederick the Great, and they won in that battle. Every page, every page a victory, who cooked the feast for the victors. Every 10 year a great man who paid the bill. So many reports, so many questions. In the last of the poem, poet says that there were many battles, means every 10 years there was a great person, he did something, he ordered something, and workers and soldiers did for him, and all credit went to that person who had ordered it, but the person who actually work over it, those people, those soldiers and those workers are neglected by the history. They are not mentioned in the history, means they lost their identity in the course of the time, but the emperor and the king, their name remained forever, their name became permanent in the history as the person who built so and so, as the person who won this battle.